What's going on? Appreciate you guys stopping by checking out this video. What I want to do is, instead of doing a traditional pedal run through, like here's how my pedal board, here's how it works, like here's my sounds, like you can figure that out, I'm pretty sure. Like if there's something unique that I don't cover, then by all means reach out to me. But otherwise, that should be pretty straightforward, like as far as how you get the sounds. What I want to do is talk about more like how do you get to this point as far as why you choose these things, why you make your decisions, why you get to where you go, like how to plan it out in the sense of thinking about your motivations. A lot of pedalboard videos are just, they're just like, hey, this is what I did and this is why I did it. But it's like, how did you get to the point where you knew this is what you needed to do? And so that's what I kind of want to walk through today. I want to walk through how did I get here from where I was? Because where I was looks nothing like this, like at all. In 2020, I started out that year basically using the same pedalboard I had used for a decade. It was essentially a full-tone, full-drive 2 MOSFET with either a Line 6 DL4 or a Boss DD20, a blues driver, and either a TR2 or something along those lines. Very rare to use that, and always like either the Holier Grail reverb from Electro Harmonics or the little nano Holy Grail reverb. And that was it. Like, and I ran that into the clean channel of a Fender Hot Rod DeVille 410, and like that was my tone. That was what I used. I had a few different amps, but with tube amps they break, and I was never in a place where I was like, I'm going to spend the money to fix that. Like, no, that's pointless. And especially since most of my amps were junk. Like my Fender Hot Rod DeVille 410 is a 1991 American made one, and that doesn't mean it's better. That just means it's older. The PCB board on it is black. Like, it has a terminal illness. It is going to die. And I knew that. Like, I've known that for a while. I had borrowed buddies' amps here and there. So I started out at that point. And in 2020, I decided to pursue. Let's update this thing. Let's see what's out there. Let's see what's new. Let's see what's cool. Let's see what's better. Because at that point, I was still like, hey, Barber Direct Drive, that's super cool. Hey, Keeley has a 4-knob compressor. Mind blown. Like, he's so cutting edge. Like, that was essentially my knowledge of pedals at that point. The OCD is the best Marshall in a box, and some people may still argue that. But, like, that was all I knew. I didn't know any better. I didn't know anything else. And so I decided to go down that rabbit hole, and I really went down that rabbit hole. Like, and I started, just trying to figure out what I needed. But I approached it from the point of view of what do I need? I was a tube amp guy. I was, here's the standbys, the full tones, the Keeley. That was the only brands out there. Like, I needed to bring myself into the modern guitar player's world. And so, in the past, I'd used the Line 6 all-in-one things. Always sold them because I always had issues with them. But I didn't know what the Helix world was like now. I didn't know, where the competitors out there. I definitely didn't understand what a Kemper is. Like, it's just very confusing. So I started, going down the road. I knew my amp was on its deathbed. It still is. I just don't play it, so it's, kind of in a comatose state. And so I started going down and trying to figure out what do I need there. I got a Fender Pro Junior, one of the little 15-watt things with 2 knobs. It was super great, but where I play is a church, and it's a 300-seat room, basically. And it's built in a way where everybody sits relatively close. So a loud tube amp has never really been an option for me. I kept the Hot Rod DeVille so quiet, but it was miserable. But then through the pandemic, we started live streaming, and all of a sudden you had to pay attention to mic bleed. You had to pay attention to all those things. So we tried putting that Fender amp, that Pro Junior or whatever, in the back room, and we tried to isolate it. Still didn't really stay quiet enough, and it was bleeding into other rooms that were adjacent. So I just decided, okay, I'm going to go direct. I got to figure out a direct solution, but I'm still a tube amp guy. So I got a Rev G20 with a higher gain one. So, like, I think the D20 is the no gain one or the less gain, and then the D20 is, or the G20, whichever one, is the higher gain one. I got that. I like metal, but I don't play metal very often, especially at church. And so that amp was like, it was overkill for me. And so okay, let's go even more direct. Got rid of it. Milkman, I went with the Amp 100. Super cool, has a tube in it. But for $800, there wasn't anything unique about it. Like, it reacted really well. It played like an amp. It sounded good. But it was like $800, and this is clean. Like, I did an experiment where I took one of those GFI Kabzu speaker simulator things. It's not an IR loader, but it's a speaker simulator. And I ran my board without the amp. because I was going direct, and there wasn't that big of a difference between using the Milkman, the amp, and not using it, and using with the GFI speakers emulator. I was like, man, well, that's okay. So I got rid of that, and I decided, all right, let's go with the Helix. I went with the HX Stomp, and the HX Stomp was super great, but there's like a bajillion things in it, and like on one hand, it turned me back on to, using modulation and different effects, but on the other hand, it's like, it was really frustrating because of how limited the power was in it, and there was just that digitalness to it that I didn't really care for. Like, in a mix, you can't hear it, but like when you're playing it by itself, I could hear it, and I couldn't tweak it out, and it was just, you had to think of everything. It was too much to mess with, as in like, your impedance issues and all that kind of stuff. There's just so much to it I didn't care for. But through the Helix, I discovered MIDI. And it was like, oh, this is cool. It was like having that Pod XT Live or whatever it was, where you hit a button and all of a sudden, like, it changes everything on your board. It's like, I like this. It was very limited. You could only send a few program messages or CC messages per thing. You only had 3 scenes, but it was like, yes, I want this. And so that turned me on to, I want the functionality of a Helix, but I don't want a Helix. And the Quad Cortex was brand new at that point and was barely shipping. I said, I don't want to deal with that. And AXFX is like super, super expensive, which I laugh at now because it's like I could have bought one for what I paid for all of this. But I decided, I'm just going to build a pedal board. And so I got the ACS-1, and I decided I'm going to do MIDI. Did a little bit of research. Morningstar looked outdated compared to what that Pirate MIDI was doing. So I ordered a Pirate MIDI like last September, and I'm still waiting on it. Like, ordered the Bridge 6. Like, it's been absolutely ridiculous. I get it. I understand it. Like, manufacturing, pandemic, chip shortages, supply shortages. Like, I understand the headaches, but it's like, come on. Like, you promised me to be 6 months, and like, I'm pretty sure I won't get it for a solid year. And that's really annoying and frustrating. So I did some asking around. I was like, what can I get controller-wise? And everybody's like, try Morningstar. So I did. And Morningstar are the bee's knees. Like, they know what they're doing. Their editing software is awesome. They make it super easy. It's almost like using a Helix. Like on a Helix, you edit the presets, you edit the sounds. You know what parameters you're changing. That's pretty much what it is on this, just about. Like, it has all, like, every pedal I have, like, it knows all the presets. You just get on their MIDI dictionary and then just drag and drop. Like, it's the way to go. So I got this, but this was after I decided I wanted to do the MIDI thing, and so I tried getting all MIDI pedals. So I got a lot of those Jackson Audio pedals. I had the Bloom, I had the Asabi, I had the Golden Boy. Super great pedals, incredible sounding pedals. But like, I didn't like that I had to send like at least 2 or 3 CC messages to do what essentially is a program change per thing. So it was like, there was a lot of times I spent programming those on that HX Stomp, and I was like, I don't really care for this. So instead, I got the ML5 from Morningstar as well, which is super cool, but they just announced, it's July 2022, hey, we're coming out with an ML10, which is going to be a 5 stereo loop mixer, and you can change the order. So yeah, I'm already outdated, but that's just kind of how this thing goes. And so that's the core of the system, right? So I've got the Morningstar MC8 controller. I've got that ML5 looper for the first half of my rig, and that gets me to where we can start going through. But the idea here is that I wanted something direct. I wanted something that I could control everything on with a push of a button, and I wanted something that was relatively affordable, which I absolutely failed on that part. So let's kind of go through the basics of what I did here. This is a Temple Audio Trio 21. I like Temple stuff. The reason I went with Temple stuff is because it was cheaper. But really, I'm satisfied with it. I don't feel the need to upgrade to anything else. I liked this size because, as I mentioned earlier, I was used to a Heiner's bread basket that I put auto carpet on, stapled, and zip tied it together, and like, that's what I used. And this is pretty much the same dimensions. I really like the shape of that thing. I like the angle of it. This is pretty much like if a company tried to build that and not make it look like a bread basket, then that's what this is. And I really like that. They're mod things that go on the sides. I'm not super crazy about them. I had not the buffer mod, the summing mod, and I went through 2 of those things. Temple was really great about replacing them because they just crapped out, like they didn't work right. But I just that it needs redesign. It's not good. The only mods I use are the IEC mod, which the video for another time. I had to actually bolt it to the frame. I had to drill it out and bolt it because I accidentally stripped the screws on it by I bumped it when I was installing the MIDI box underneath, and it stripped the screws out, and there's so few threads there that it was done. So I had to bolt it to it, but honestly, it's probably better to do that anyways. Might go ahead and do that with my other one too, because the other mod I use is the patch bay mod. It saves you the headache because you're bolting it to it instead of relying on like 2 or 3 itty bitty screws to hold everything. But yeah, those are the only Temple mods that I use. One of the things I really liked is this tiered structure thing. So as I was going through this, I built a pedal board out of the cheapest wood I could buy. It was that glued slats together you get at Lowe's. I think it's made for kitchens or something. It broke after 6 months, but with it, I decided to build a tiered thing just as a proof of concept, and I loved it. Like, that was like awesome for me. I could hide things underneath that I don't use regularly, and it gets other things up away. Like, that's the other part of it, is it gets things away from these, so I'm not like stepping on the same level as these for the third row, and my giant size 15 feet stomp on everything. Like, this gets everything out of the way. I really, really like the tiered system. This is an Aero series riser from Creation. It's super great, and the coolest thing about it was that this is a 17, and again, this is the Trio 21. The holes lined up perfectly. I didn't have to drill any holes to make this work. It's not as fancy as the Vertex one. It doesn't just latch when you bring it down. Instead, it just has 4 bolts in it, and it comes with like these little hex head. Not hex head. Well, they're Allen key little bolts with thumb screw things on it, but they're really tiny. So I went and I figured out the dimensions. You can take one of them to Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever, or Fastenal if you have one, and figure out the threads on it. And I ordered one of these from Amazon. Actually, I ordered a pack because they didn't come in singles. But it's a big old thumb screw that's really easy to grab quickly. I need to cut it because it's just too long, meaning I have to unscrew for a lot longer than I need to. It doesn't damage anything. There's plenty of space underneath for the long screw, but I'm just going to cut that down a little bit. That's probably the only thing I'll do with that, but these are really, really great, and they're cheap. So figure out your sizes and do that if you go this route. So signal routing, it goes in the patch bay, comes up here to this pedal called the Fixer from Browne Amplification. I guess I mentioned earlier, I really like Browne Amplification. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but I like Browne Amplification. I had the Protein for a long time. I only sold it because I had a special edition that was worth a bunch of money, and so I sold it, and I was going to replace it, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But they came out with this very recently, and it's one of those things like you don't know you need it until you have it, unless you know you need it. It's like having 2 boosts in one, but it's more than just that. It's like having master volumes, having 2 different master volumes, and it's a really good quality buffer according to their literature. I feel like I can hear a difference over my TC, like it sounds more natural to me, but that could also be, hey, I paid a bunch of money for this pedal, it needs to sound better to justify it. I don't know, you be the judge. But I like this function right here. Like, so essentially, it's not just boosts; they're just levels. So, if I were to, this is unity gain. Okay, it can go underneath, so you can underdrive. So technically, you could have like a really hot sound, kick this on, and now you've got a clean channel if you're that kind of guy. But it also has a really great boost, like. I'm an always-on pedal kind of guy, and we'll talk about that in a second. If I just need more sustain and a little bit of volume, I've got it there. Like, so it just overdrives my Lightspeed a little bit more. And with MIDI, I feel like a smart thing to do is to always build in a panic button, right? Like, you need to be able to just hit one button always to give you what you need, whether it's you're somebody that needs a little more crunch, well, okay, this is my panic button, or you need a little more boost, I program a volume boost on every single page. Like, even if I toggle pages, there's still a volume boost on every one, because if I need it and I don't have it, you don't, typically in that moment, you don't have time to scroll through pages to find your boost. Like, just make sure it's on there. So this gives me that extra, I need a little something, and it's awesome. It also has a tuner mute, which that's cool. It's kind of nice, but I've got a volume pedal later on with the chain, so it doesn't matter. But it has a tuner out and a main output. Super solid. I really like it. It's not a game changer pedal. I could be fine without it, but I like having it rather than not having it. So from there, we go to the Duke Silver compressor from Emerson. I did have the Jackson Audio Bloom. It was super great. I bought it because I had MIDI preset changing, and that's cool. Sounded awesome. I'm finding myself using compression a lot less lately. I play a Fender Maverick Dorado, which has Gretsch style mini humbuckers in it. And it's got plenty of compression. And I find that if I need more compression, it typically is in a situation where I need more gain. And, well, that's what gain pedals do. So I find myself not using it very much. Plus, if I have it on and I kick on the extra thing, you hear how it just overdrives the compressor, and that's a sound. It's just not a sound I go for. But it is nice to have. And like I said, if I'm doing something that has a lot of lead in it, I will use it. But honestly, I may be ditching it even for something even less fancy. I like it. Like I said, I had the Bloom. I had some issues with it. I had some reliability issues with it. Jackson Audio was super great about getting it fixed for free, but I'm using Compressor less and less lately, so I may end up going to something even simpler. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, that's it. Super great compressor. The only thing to mention about it, and there's not a lot of videos on this, the blend knob is not blending in dry signal. It's blending in compression. So keep that in mind. You have your sustain, you have your attack. It requires a little bit more knowledge of how compression works than just your standard 2-knob Dynacomp raw style thing. But it works really, really well. I just don't use it as much anymore. So from there, we go into the ML5. And so like every good ML5 or MC8 owner, I have pages I can jump to very quickly to control everything. So this page right here I have set up is controlling the loops in the Morningstar ML5. And so starting out, let's start with loop D because it's kind of the foundation. It never gets turned off really, which you might be like, well, that's weird. Why would you do that? Well, I kind of have to. There's no way. Like this needs to be at this point in the chain, and I can't insert something in there that isn't in a loop. So the Lightspeed takes up a loop because of the downsides of the ACS-1. But you've seen a million videos on the Lightspeed, I'm sure. That is what I discovered as I was researching overdrives. It's like one of the most popular overdrive pedals out there. I would not call it transparent. I would say it doesn't radically change your tone, but it is not transparent at all. It has a really cool sparkle thing, like a Fender Deluxe kind of thing in the high end, which you have to be careful with when you're using digital, because with digital stuff, you have to be careful about your high frequencies. They can very quickly become artificial sounding and harsh sounding. So this has that cool sparkle thing. It has just the perfect amount of high end. And I basically consider it like my preamp. Like the ACS-1, one of my biggest gripes about it is it really lacks the ability to have a true edge of breakup tone. Like it can kind of get there, but when you push it to that point, it gets really noisy. It's meant to be a clean pedal platform. We'll talk about it more in a second. So I use the Lightspeed essentially as an always on. It is my preamp section. Really, really dig it. From there, my second stage is the Southland, which is it's just more Lightspeed. it's the gain structure is a little different. It can sound really good on its own. It's an awesome pedal, but I'm typically I'm a stack gain kind of person. So I like setting it up to be stacked. It adds a cool like harmonic thing, and I know it says harmonic overdrive on it, but it adds like that kind of cool thing to it. So we'll go. So this is loop D. This is loop C. Loop B is the fuzz. Basic Audio Scarab Deluxe, which is a modified Tone Bender Mark II, which the Tone Bender Mark II is my favorite fuzz. I don't use fuzz a whole lot, and I'm using it more than I ever have now. But like I wanted that Tone Bender sound because Zeppelin. That's really my only reason. Zeppelin. I want the Tone Bender Mark II sound. But I didn't want to go pay $300 or $200. So this was a clone by RCO Pedals. It sounds fantastic for what it is. I'm all for like go support the companies that make these things. And I do plan on replacing this at some point. But it sounds incredible. It does the cool gated thing too. So you're about right there. It gets spitty. So it's awesome sounding. I love it. It's such a good pedal. So that is Loop B. Then on top of that, I typically stack this pedal, and this is called the Tentacle by Earthquaker. Now on its own, it's cool. It sounds really a lot better up high. Like it's a green ringer basically, which if you aren't familiar with what those are, go look them up. They're super cool. Typically on worship pedal boards, you see like octave things. You see like the Pog basically exclusively, or if they're a little bit cheaper board, they'll get the sub and up, and that's cool. Like, but I've never liked that sound. I've never liked that super. I don't even know what the right way to say it. Like it's really cool, but it's just not something I've ever liked. I like something a little bit more organic sounding, if that's the right word. Buzzwords are dumb, but I like this a lot better because it is an all analog pedal. You can see there's no knobs. It's really tiny. But it does a cool thing. So we're playing a lot of songs like Child of Love and stuff like that from bands who are a little more southern or classic rock inspired at church. So like instead of doing the Pog thing, I'll do this thing, for like this riff. You can see it, like it's different, and that's what I like about it. Is it's not the same thing you hear over and over and over, and it fits with what we're doing. Like I'm not saying everybody needs to go try and do this. Like if your situation calls for that standard Bethel Hillsong octave thingy, cool, do it. Mine doesn't, and I don't want to. So this is what I use this sound a lot for, that kind of lead riff stuff. The Tentacle also works really well with the Southland, It's such a cool pedal. I could sit there and play for days. I mean, even like if you do something like this, like there's things that go up, there's things that go down. It just folds and twists your signal in all kinds of cool ways. I love it. Don't get a Pog, get one of these. It's way more fun. So anyways, also in the Tentacle loop, so loop A, I have my Audition. So basically if I have something I want to do pre-drives, I can still have MIDI control over it. As far as turning it on and off, I just turn off the Tentacle and there it is. So if I want to use a Qtron or something like that, I have the ability to do so and still control it in a live scenario. And that brings us to the last loop, which is the Tone Job. This is the Earthquaker devices. It's their EQ pedal basically, and like I'm all for like people having those just a generic EQ pedal, like a 9-band or a 10-band or whatever. But I just never really gelled with those. I've had several of them. Because like if you have a typical EQ. If you have a straight line and that's your EQ frequencies, when you adjust those bands, it just adjusts a little bit. And so if you like adjust all of them up, it's going to be like, you look like a fence. It's going to be spiky. Whereas this adjusts big, wide frequencies. So to me, it feels and plays a lot more organically. And it's super cheap and it's really awesome. Like I love this pedal. It's not talked about enough. I use it as I need to get out front in the mix pedal, basically. So it's got 3 bands and they're very interactive. But like right now, like this is just. Like you can see, that's unity gain basically. So it works as just as a boost. And it's just going to overdrive the ACS-1 even more. And it sounds really, really good. Like I said, this pedal is super underrated. For how cheap it is, like, it's worth it. But I typically run it like this, just a slight boost and then a bump in the treble and mid. So it kind of looks like the way a treble booster does. Like the lows stay here, and then the mids and the highs just kind of have this big arch if you're looking at the frequencies. So it gets brighter and more present. But like if I needed to use it as a tone shaping thing, like I could scoop the mids, and like now we're in Fender Deluxe territory. Well, add some gain to that, and it's like, like it can do like the cool 80s thing. Like I would never really have a need for that live, but there it is. It's awesome. And like I said, I use it on the last loop, so I need to be out front. I need to be more present. I need to be more in the mix, and it's perfect for that. And like I said, it's so cheap, worth it. Definitely look those up if you're like, hey, I like EQ pedals, but not those EQ pedals. From there, we go to back out of the ML5 into, I believe, my volume pedal, and then the Walrus Julia, or vice versa. It really doesn't matter. This is always on. So I use this. Like, I love vibrato. I know it's not everybody's thing, but I love it. There it is with it off, but the way I have it set is it just adds a little bit of something to it. This is one of the most popular pedals out there for a reason. Like, it's a lot of people's gateway drug back into the land of chorus and vibrato. I leave it on. I could put it underneath the pedal. Like, this is how I have it set. Crank the depth, just barely adjust the lag, bring the rate all the way down, put it all the way in vibrato, and it just adds a depth. I know not everybody likes that, but I love it. And that's just where it's at. And then, like I said, these two, I'm not sure which one's which, but it goes from there to the volume pedal. And the volume pedal, just only thing I'll say on that is it needs to be the proper volume pedal. This is not the regular one. This is one that's designed for active pickups or whatever, because it's in the middle of the chain. Like, there's lots of videos, lots of smart people who talk about that. But from there, it goes to the M1. And the M1 is, I have a love-hate relationship with it. On the one hand, it sounds really good. Like, it's got me back into using modulation effects, whereas before I haven't. Like, I haven't for a long time because, you got to buy all kinds of them, and they're very difficult. But this has got me back into it, which I really am grateful for. But it's got some big hang-ups. Part of, like, going through the MIDI thing is I've been very picky about my pedals and them being able to have trails and whatnot. And the problem with the M1 is when you do a program change, it definitely has a gap. You can do a stutter thing, but it's like it's a bit of a pain. And there's been some other hang-ups. They're working it out. I'm sure Walrus will get it to where it needs to go. It's that gap is really annoying. But there's a harmonic tremolo. Cool pattern tremolo. It does a lot of cool things. Envelope filter. I got a Leslie. I really like the Leslie on it. And it does the whole, like, the cool ramping thing. Really cool. Chorus sounds super good. The tri-chorus. Like that sounds like it needs adjusted a little bit, but you know, there it is. An old record. This is kind of like a use that for intro of some songs. Chop tremolo. One of the cool things I've done with my MC8 is I've made, especially on this bank, my expression pedal control rate and depth. So this lets you do that ramping thing. You know, and that does so like. Let you kind of turn it into a little bit. But you know, that's how I use that. From there, it goes to the ACS-1. The ACS-1, as I mentioned earlier, it's not perfect. I prefer edge of breakup for my amp tones, and this doesn't do that really. Like it does if you really, really push it all the way with the gain up, but then it gets really noisy. It's just, it wasn't designed to do that, and so expecting that is, you're shooting yourself in the foot. But I've got it set up with some nice IRs. The IRs that come on up pretty good. I could live with them, but I had some. The IRs aren't expensive, so there's really no reason not to try them, especially when people are making them specifically for it. So this is turn that off. This is David Hislop's tone matched one. So it's an English greenback. This is a Fender Vox thing. This is a Fender with one of those Hislop greenbacks. And like I said, it does good. But you're limited because it really wants to be a clean platform. And one of the things I'm still not satisfied with is when you do like a truly clean platform, there's not going to be that big a difference in your sounds. You know, so without the Lightspeed, like there's the Vox. There's the Vox Fender, and it's like it's a little bit more depth to it. And that's my problem with it is you're not getting the things that make each of these amps really special, but it wasn't designed to be that. It was designed to be a pedal platform. And for that, it does fine. Like I said, I'm happy with the Lightspeed. I'm happy with my setup. It's not going to be the end of my setup. This isn't like the rest of my life kind of setup. Because I know there's things coming down the pike that are going to make this specifically, the ACS-1, not viable. Maybe viable is the wrong word, but like there's no need for it. Like there's other things that are way better. And so from there, it goes to the D1 and the Big Sky. So a couple things on the D1 and the Mako series in general. They're really well designed. Size, footprint wise, super awesome. MIDI wise, they don't like it. What I mean by that is, if you've started trying to program these things, and you saw in the beginning, they don't process MIDI as well as other things. So like whenever I put anything through the Big Sky, it pretty much does it first try. With the Mako stuff, especially if you're daisy chaining, it drops signals. Like it doesn't process everything quickly. And so when I first put this together, I had all kinds of issues because everything was daisy chained. I went and got a Kenton Midi Box, and that made a big difference. So if you're chaining together Mako series pedals, you need to make sure on each one gets direct. And so that Kenton Midi Box, it's cheap, small. I'll put in pictures and stuff of it underneath. it does the job well. It makes it a lot easier. And I put a 5-second millisecond delay on my messages as well, and that helps as well space things out so that the processors in the Mako series have more time to think about it. And the worst one about it seems to be the M1. Like the D1 does pretty good. The ACS-1 does pretty good. The R1, when I had it, did pretty good. This dude it seems to struggle more than the others. But they're updating. I'm sure Walrus will get it right. But the D1, it does really, really well. It's not my favorite delay, but for the way I use delays, it does really, really well. Like, I have no complaints about it. There's a always on kind of deal, a dotted eighth, a bigger dotted eighth. And it does everything that you would want a delay. Here's a U2. Here's my attempt to recreate the Andy Timmons sound. I can't play like Andy Timmons, but he's a big inspiration. But yeah, just that dual delay. It's not truly his sound because his has delays going into delays, and this is dual delay. It's got slap. It does that really well. But it also has really cool stuff. Like the reverse delay is super neat. But what really sets this pedal apart, the unique feature, is the attack knob. Like if you roll that all the way up, it basically removes the attack from the delay, so you don't get that initial thing. And so with reverse, like it just becomes this long, really cool droning thing. It does really cool stuff. And then, it does do some weird stuff. So you've got like this glitchy thing. You can find a use for it. It's not my thing. Honestly, I use the Halo or the Always On, which is just a quarter note. Either way, it's subtle. It just is out of the way. So yeah, that's it. I always have a home button and a hub button on every single page, like I mentioned earlier. Let's see, where is the big sky? Here we go. And then I get to the big sky, which, I mean, I don't really feel like I need to explain the big sky. I have my sounds on it. I have a spring. Turn that off. Spring, a hall, the big hall, small arena, plate, another plate, another slap, cloud. I don't really use that much, and that's like, I'm maybe not the best person to talk to about a big sky, because the big sky to me, it's outdated already. I've listed it for sale once before just because I know it, like, it's outdated. It sounds good. Functionally, it does exactly what you want it to. When you put stuff to it, when you send messages to it, it does what you want it to. You want trails, it has trails. You want crossover, it has spiller. Like, it's awesome. Sounds are great. My favorite sounds, though, are not the sounds that are unique to it, though, in it. My favorite sounds are like the hall reverb and the magneto. That's probably my favorite sound in it. Oil drum kind of reverby thing. that? See that? See how it, I don't know if that came across, but like it took 2 presses to get the M1 to do what I wanted it to. So yeah, I love that sound. But I can tell you right now, as soon as the Specular Tempest V2 drops, I don't have any insights to that. I'm just assuming, because if they do what they did for their modulation pedal with the Specular Tempest, dual engine, crossover, I'll buy that right now. I will sell both of these pedals and buy it right now, because that is what I want. I want that pedal. I had the Specular Tempest for a while, and the Spatium and the 70s plate in that are just, to me, that's the only reverb sounds I want. Like, if I just give me a basic spring reverb and give me those 2 sounds, and I'm good. I don't need anything else. I love those reverb sounds. But that basically gets me to the end of the chain. From there, it goes to the Walrus Canvas Stereo, and that is awesome. Absolutely love that thing. Worth every penny. Is it better than the Daiso? I don't know. I've never had one. But they do kind of the same thing. If it doesn't have a polarity switch, so if that matters, go with the Daiso and get that option. But yeah, that's basically it. A couple other ins and outs. Power supply. Get the Fender engine room stuff. Like, don't fool around with anything else. Like, I had this the True Tone CS12. It caused me some headaches. But most of them have, like, this slot has this many milliamp rate. Like, they have different ratings. The Fender engine room, every single one is 500 milliamps. Like that, you don't have to think about what you're dealing with. Like, it has 2 on the level 12. I don't know about the other ones, but the level 12, it has 2 that are 9, 12 volt or 18 volt switchable. So you can do that. But really, if you just need everything 9 volt, you don't have to worry about where you're putting it. Everything works. It's awesome. This is being powered by the USB output on it. So this doesn't even take up one of the slots on there. Like, it's awesome. It's got USB-C. Don't fool with anything else. I'm telling you right now, you'll thank me later if you just go get one of the Fender engine room. I got the level 12. It's super duper awesome. Worth it. The other thing I mentioned earlier is I have the Kenton Midi Box to try to get everything its direct MIDI signal, because I think if you had all Strymon stuff, it wouldn't be an issue. But the Mako stuff, it doesn't work as well with MIDI. Like, it works, but especially M1 really struggles with it. And so that kind of gets me to the end of this video. And I want to wrap it up by this. I want to talk about why you shouldn't do this. On one hand, it's like, you do all this, and you've got the functionality of, an all-in-one, a Helix, a Quad Cortex, and it's even easier to adjust on the fly, right? Like, I could put this in a mode where, I have to turn off all the pedals like these, but like turn all the loops on, and I've got a pedal board I can use like analog, like, if that makes sense. Like, I can adjust everything, turn on, turn off everything on the fly. I don't have to go through menus to adjust settings. Like, I go and I get it. That's one of the reasons that the Mako series attracted me, is I can adjust it on the fly. That being said, essentially I've gone the long way around to make one of those, to make a Fractal, to make a Helix, to make a Quad Cortex with less options. I mean, that's really the bottom line. If I want a different sound, if I want a different overdrive, say, I have to swap out pedals. If I want a specific delay sound, like if I wanted to do the true Andy Timmons sound and do a delay into a delay, I don't have that option. And so if you're somebody that needs to tweak a lot, that needs to change things a lot, or you're just always swapping things out, you're never truly satisfied with what you have, don't do this. This is a waste of time and money for you. Like, don't do this at all. This is not good. This is not what you want, because this will be an endless money pit. Instead, just get one of those Quad Cortexes. Get a Helix. And here's the other side of it. I understand that not everybody can afford that, and they need to piece it together one at a time. That's fine. But I also understand that things aren't quite there yet. As in, there's no perfect unit out there. And that's basically where I stand. I fully expect the next generation of all-in-ones, of modelers, profilers, whatever you want to call them, the next generation to come out, I'm going to be done with this. Like, I don't mean that to say this is bad, but I know, like, we've seen the Quad Cortex, right? Like, the Quad Cortex, you can see the potential there. Like, being able to run plugins on in a standalone unit, being able to capture both pedals and amps, having the touch screen, being able to drag and drop things around, basically using it like your iPhone, like using like where you just tap like that to me, like, okay, it's there. And I know companies like Line 6 and Kemper see that and go, yeah, we can beat that. We can do that better. And so, you know, the Helix 2 or whatever it's called, when it comes out, I guarantee you it's going to be a game changer. When the Quad Cortex 2 finally gets everything together, it's a game changer. When whatever Kemper does next comes out, it's going to be a game changer because the technology is there. And when it hits, it's going to make a lot of this stuff outdated. Like, I've used it, like with the Helix stuff. Like, people, when I was playing, people can't tell the difference between this and my amp. Like, I had a few people ask me, what amp are you using? I'm using that little box. Same with the ACS-1. Like, we're to the point now where it's not a matter of does it sound realistic. It's much more, does it cross the line of does it feel right? And does it cross the line of functionality? Like, is it easy to use? Is it manageable? Is it user friendly? And I think the next generation that we're going to see in the next 5 years is going to be that. So, yes, I build a MIDI pedal board, but I also fully expect to be done with individual pedals like this very soon. So, keep that in mind as well as you're going about planning your business. If you have any questions, like, reach out to me. I'd love to talk shop, talk gear. Otherwise, thanks for stopping by.